Okay, picture this. You're all prepped for surgery, right? And then bam, someone realizes there's a mistake in your medical chart.
Yeah.
That's got to be a little unnerving, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Makes you wonder how hospitals make sure those electronic medical records, those EMRs, are accurate.
Hmm.
Well, that's what we're going to be diving into today.
Yeah, untangling the world of EMR updates. It's a little bit like we're going behind the scenes with your own health information.
Exactly.
So you might see these terms, but maybe you haven't really thought about them. Addendums, amendments,
Hmm.
late entries, those are always fun.
Oh, yeah.
And then what happens when the software itself decides to act up?
Exactly. And we're going to try and demystify all that. Hopefully by the end of this deep dive, you'll be able to look at your medical records and understand what's going on and why those updates are there. So first off, let's unpack these definitions.
Okay.
We've got addendum, amendment, late entry, and correction. Can you walk us through what each of these actually means in the world of EMRs?
So you can almost think of it like you're editing a very important blog post about your health.
Okay.
And an addendum is like adding a PS.
Okay.
So it's extra info that wasn't available when that first blog post was written, so to speak, with the medical record.
Yeah.
And so, maybe your doctor got a test result back after seeing you. That would be an addendum, and it clarifies and adds to what's already there.
So if I forgot to tell my doctor something really important, they could add that in as an addendum later.
Exactly, yeah. So let's move on to amendment. An amendment is more like hitting that edit button. It's when a mistake in the original entry, it needs to be corrected.
Yeah.
The original entry is still there so that there's complete transparency.
Oh, okay.
But now everyone can see what was changed and why it was changed.
Oh, that's good for accountability too.
Exactly, yeah. Keeps everyone honest, keeps everyone on the same page.
And it's a safety net, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, late entries, we've all been guilty of forgetting to jot something down. Does that apply to the EMR world too?
Oh, I'm sure it does.
It absolutely does. So let's say a busy nurse forgets to document a patient's vital signs right away.
Oh, yeah.
And so as soon as they realize it, they'll make a late entry. They add that information in with the correct timestamp and a note explaining why it's late. Ideally, these are done, within 24 to 72 hours, but the sooner the better for accuracy.
Yeah, the sooner the better. Wow, even with all the chaos of a hospital, they still have systems in place to make sure they catch every detail. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Okay, last one, corrections. Is that just a fancy word for amendment, or is there a nuance there?
So it is similar to an amendment, but the focus is really on fixing inaccuracies. So whether it's a typo, a factual error, the original entry stays put, but that correction is clearly marked. And this keeps a clear audit trail. It's like a digital footprint of every change made to your record.
So nobody can just go in and secretly change my medical records.
No.
Every little change is recorded.
It's all tracked. Transparency and accountability. Those are the key words. And speaking of timelines, there's usually like a 30-day window for most updates. And this gives healthcare providers enough time to gather all the necessary information. They can review everything carefully, make the appropriate changes.
But there are times when they got to fix things right away, right? Like what if there's like a medication error or something?
Absolutely, yeah. If they put in the wrong dosage,
Uh-oh.
they've got to fix that immediately.
Yeah.
That could be really dangerous.
Yeah.
And so it's not just about paperwork. It's really about ensuring patient safety. That's the top priority.
Right. So it's not just getting it right, it's getting it right quickly.
Right.
Okay. Now, these updates, addendums, amendments, all that stuff, that applies to all sorts of entries in the EMR, right? It's not just what the doctor writes down.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. From nurses' notes and medication orders to discharge summaries and lab reports, anything and everything in your electronic medical record.
Wow. That's a lot.
It's about painting a complete and accurate history of your health journey.
That makes sense. So we've talked about, human error, but what about when the technology itself decides to, go wonky?
Yeah.
I know software can be, finicky at times. What happens when those systems mess things up?
Yeah, software errors, they definitely happen. And it can range from just a little glitch to major malfunctions. Imagine a system crashing right in the middle of updating a patient's record, or even auto-populating a field with incorrect information.
I remember one time the system kept defaulting to the wrong patient's birthday.
Oh, wow.
Luckily, they caught it before anything too serious happened, but it made me realize how much we rely on these systems to work.
We do. That's why it's crucial to have protocols in place to address these errors quickly and effectively.
Yeah.
So anyone who spots an error, whether it's a doctor, a nurse, a clerk, they have to document it immediately, notify the IT department.
So it's all hands on deck to catch those glitches. Okay, so what happens next? How do they actually fix these errors?
So first off, they have to document the correction itself.
Right.
What was the error? When was it discovered? How's it rectified? And if the error impacts patient care directly, like that medication dosage example we talked about, the issue is escalated and resolved right away.
Oh, okay. So they have like a triage system, I guess, with the errors.
Exactly.
The ones that could hurt somebody get dealt with first. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
But even for those less urgent errors, it's still important to do a thorough audit, find the root cause. Why did this happen? This helps prevent similar errors in the future.
So it's like, those detective shows, they're always looking for, why did this crime happen? What caused it?
Yeah.
Only here, the crime is a software glitch that messed up somebody's health record.
Exactly. Yeah. So if we spot something off in our own records, what can we do about it?
That's a great question.
And that leads perfectly into our next segment, where we're going to talk about how you can advocate for yourself.
Oh.
So we'll be getting into patient portals, how to review your records, and what to do if you see something that doesn't seem right. Stay tuned. So we've talked about all these different types of updates and, why they matter, but let's get real, Let's see some real-world examples.
Yeah, I always find that helps me, kind of seeing how these things actually play out, in a hospital.
Absolutely. So let's say a physician, prescribes medication, but they realize later, oh, I accidentally ordered the wrong dosage.
Uh-oh.
That's a critical error. That needs attention, like right away. Right.
Yeah, that sounds a little scary. What would they do in that situation?
So they would immediately go into the patient's EMR, and they'd create what's called an amendment to that original medication order.
Okay.
And the amendment, it clearly states the correct dosage, and the system, it records the time the change was made.
So even though you can still see the original error, everyone knows it's been fixed and they know what the right dosage is supposed to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the patient gets the right medication, and it keeps a record for accountability.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, let's say a nurse, she's entering a patient's temperature, but accidentally puts it in Celsius instead of Fahrenheit. How would they fix that?
Well, that's a great example of when you would use a correction.
Okay.
So the nurse would just document the correct temperature in Fahrenheit and make a note that, hey, that original entry, it was in Celsius. It happens, We've all accidentally used the wrong units, especially when you're, in a rush.
Yeah, like when you're baking and you forget to convert from cups to milliliters.
Exactly. And just like with the medication error, that original entry, it stays there, but that correction, it's clearly marked. So everyone has the accurate information.
Got it. Okay, what about, those late entries we were talking about? Can you give us an example of when you might have to make one of those?
Sure. Let's say a nurse is just slammed with patients, and she forgets to document a patient's pain assessment. As soon as she realizes it, even if it's a few hours later, she'd make a late entry.
Right. I mean, we're all human. Things slip our minds sometimes, especially in a busy place like a hospital.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So she'd document that pain assessment as soon as she remembers it, make sure to put the correct time on it, and also a little note explaining why it's late.
Okay.
It's all about transparency.
These examples really help. Seeing how it all works in a real hospital with real patients.
Yeah, it's not just about the terms. It's about how they're actually used.
Right. And these are just a few examples, right? I mean, I'm assuming things might be a little different from hospital to hospital.
Right. The procedures, they might vary a little bit, but the core principles, accuracy, transparency, patient safety, those always stay the same.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. I mean, we've defined all these terms. We talked about the timelines. We even got into those, software errors. We've seen how it all works through these examples.
Yeah, a lot of information.
And most importantly, we've hopefully, helped you guys listening understand how these updates work and why they're so important. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the future of all this.